Hello, everybody. My name is Damian Donaldson. I am the creator and author of this advanced resume development workshop. And today we're going to be talking to you about, just as it is, how do you develop a resume, but not just any resume, an advanced resume. As far as I know, this is something that falls under Mrs. B uh, and her, I guess, introduction to careers. And so my goal today is to really try to help you figure out some of the basics of resume building, and then also how to take it to the next level. Because we're in this situation here where, COVID is happening. It's a real thing. It is affecting, jobs. However, we are also trying to make sure that we can remain competitive in this highly competitive environment. And I'm glad that everybody has decided to join. And if you have any questions and or comments, please at this moment make sure that you take note of the fact that you are going to be in mute only, and you're also going to be able to chat via the chat room. So if you have any ideas or anything you want to share, make sure you bring it up in the chat room. So just to check and make sure everybody's hearing me, can you go and type something in the chat room, um, just to make sure that everybody can hear me clearly? I'll go and wait. All right. You can hear me. Great. Yes. Sheila, Elrix, Guadalupe. Okay. Perfect. Then we are good to go. So this is going to be probably a very animated kind of presentation. I've been doing this for a while and I have some tricks up my sleeve. So hopefully it will be entertaining for you. So let's get straight to it. So um, what I have realized over the years, being a national recruiter, working for different organizations to try to bring talent into their organization, is that students usually have a certain mentality, right? They're aiming for this particular moment, right? The time that they graduate. But they're so focused on graduating that they're not really heading or setting themselves up for a career. They're thinking, oh, I can go through uh, the same process that plenty of students do. They think they have this 3-step plan. It seems very intuitive, very natural, but I'll tell you, it's not what you might think. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of walk through that for you real fast. Students will usually have a plan like, I'm going to pass my classes, I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to get a job. It makes simple. It makes sense. It's simple. It's straightforward. But in actuality, we need to be thinking ahead, because if most people are thinking that way, then what happens is there's a huge bottleneck when everybody graduates. And if you're not thinking ahead, if you're not trying to shore up your resources and job opportunities before then what happens is when that bulk graduation happens and all these students start applying, you're in a massive pool of people that are competing for the same job. Okay. And so you need to try to think ahead so you can move faster, move quicker, and get something sooner rather than later. And also, it reduces the competition. Okay. So make sure that you're thinking, try to avoid this plan and go outside. Think earlier, think sooner, think faster. Now, what I've noticed as well, again, especially as a career advisor for, I don't know, it was Cal State Fullerton, San Bernardino, it was Occidental College, it was University of Southern California, and also giving different trainings for places like USC, Stanford, University of Washington, ASU, mostly on the West Coast. I've realized that people will try to graduate and then they start applying, and what happens, they realize that they are not the only one. You have to wait in line. So our goal is to try to think past that. Our goal is to try to think, how do we stand out amongst all the noise that's there so that we can be the choice of the employer, and you can move on with your career. Now, as I'm trying to introduce this concept, I want to make sure that you guys know, put this in context. When you are talking to a recruiter or hiring manager, you are building and constructing an image of your professionalism bit by bit, piece by piece, right? Emails, phone calls, side conversations, text messages, all that for a recruiter or hiring manager starts to build a picture of what type of person you are, the professionalism you can bring. And it doesn't take a full kind of analysis to understand what type of person you might be working. And if you're lagging, if you're not engaging, if you're not being bringing your best self and asking questions, then before the picture is complete, the recruiter and the hiring manager has already made an assessment. This picture is not complete. We don't have to really get that last piece. We know what we're looking into right now. So if you're not thinking about how to construct a picture, believe it or not, it will come to a point where towards the end of the process, setting up appointments, if they have a picture of who you are, and it's not a positive one because you're making excuses or maybe you're just not taking it too seriously, and they have to put you in the hire and the non-hire pile, or the interview or the non-interview pile, it's simple. If they see something like this, then it's a non-hire. It's as simple as that, right? Because you're already giving them a picture of your professionalism. So your goal is to avoid that. Your goal is to make sure you look good in three possible ways. You're representing yourself in three possible ways: on paper, in person, and also online, right? Because in this digital world, that does impact your ability to get hired. Okay, so our goal today, again, is to focus on how you look on paper. There's cover letters too, but we're going to focus just on resumes today. So before I get started, I just want to do a quick check. Does everybody kind of get the understanding of where we are and what we want to do? Just put a yes in the chat box. All right, people are ready to go. Excellent. So now, I'm just going to explain this to you. Normally when I do my workshops, I usually have a, let's see here, when I do these workshops, I usually have an exercise where we have people create an airplane, and I'll explain why that is, because this is a perfect analogy. I can give them, 2 to 5 minutes to create a paper airplane. Sometimes they say, well, what do I do? I just say, just create a paper airplane. So they sometimes reference back to their childhood, or sometimes they look at the diagram and then they start building an airplane. And by the time that they're done, my goal is to say, okay, you guys are ready? You guys are ready? Now, next goal is to let's see here, is to hit the target. Now, if they're in a huge classroom or a stadium-sized classroom, or even just a small classroom, you have the screen on the wall. People look at their paper and they just start throwing. Sometimes it's very deliberately crafted. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they just put something together and they just kind of toss it. But the whole point of this is to really to say, hey, when you're trying to accomplish a goal, if you're trying to get from point A to point B with a tool, right? You have to take things into consideration, how you're constructing, how you're designing things, right? And the different elements that come into play. And you might need to make some modifications as you're doing it to, again, meet that objective. Sometimes people will look at their airplane and they won't even take a second guess. They'll be like, well, this is what I have, and they'll just toss it. And it won't go anywhere. It'll maybe go 2 feet. And this is maybe a 6 to 8 or 10 feet distance. Some people get a laugh out of it, and it's funny, it's fun. But I'll tell you a story. The best thing that ever happened, and this is coming out of Cal State Fullerton, and I thought it was genius, was the student. This was in a stadium-sized room, so you had layers, right? You have something going way in the back, and I'm down at the bottom with the screen. And a student looked at his paper and was just dismayed by the fact that he thought that he couldn't make it, right? So he just balled it up and just threw it and just chucked it with everything he had. And believe it or not, his paper was the only paper that hit the target, right? And then I stopped and I said, that is the point. When you are setting up to achieve something, you need to find out where you are right now take an analysis, make some changes and some adjustments so that and it may not be what you are truly comfortable with, but you know at the end of the day, it's going to get you there. And that is exactly what happened. The student looked at it, balled it up, thought he didn't have a chance, and he chucked it and he hit it. And that's what we need to do. We need to take our resumes and to say, if we have this resume now in our hands, what do we need to do? How do we need to customize it? What elements do we need to take into consideration in order to get to the interview, right? And that's what we're going to focus on today. Part of this is you taking a look at what you already have and then redesigning it based on the elements that we're going to talk about, okay? So let me ask you this too, and you can put it in the chat room. How many of you already have a resume? Okay, can you just type in there? Actually, hold on one second here. Let me see if I can. Just go on and say, I do, okay. Copy. Yes and no. Let me see if that works here. And I'm just gonna ask. I'm just gonna launch this poll. So take a second. Launch this poll. I want you to answer this question briefly. I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes. Actually, just a minute for you guys to answer this poll briefly. Okay, looks like we have all 10. So it looks like the majority of you have resumes, which is good, and one of you don't. So for the one that doesn't, definitely this is going to be very insightful for you because this is more about redesigning some stuff, but we have some great examples for you to look at so you can figure out how you can construct it, okay? I'm gonna stop sharing this. Now back to our presentation here. Now, as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, one thing that I've seen constantly is students that would come, right? And they would present their resume. And some of it's pretty good for the time being, but it may not be telling the whole story. It may not be matching up to the actual job description. And that's the main thing that we really want to focus on. Our target is the job description, the language, the words being used. And when you look at a regular resume that hasn't been like customized to a particular job description, you may find that there are certain skills that the student is, pushing for. Like, this is who I am, this is great, this is how I see myself. And it may, for example, say 30% teamwork, 70% communication, which is actually true for what the job is asking for. But if you're not doing the research, you may miss the fact that the employer is saying, well, in addition to teamwork, in addition to communication, we actually need some leadership. We need you to tell us stories about leadership, and we need to be able to see that in your resume. And so what happens is if that distance, right, makes it difficult for you to pull in the actual interview. And what happens, just like with the airplane, you're just gonna look at something and toss it. You're not gonna make any adjustments. You know what's gonna happen? You're going to miss the target each and every time. So reading the job description, understanding that is going to be very important. And we're going to take a step into that. Figure out how we understand it and the language we use. So one more thing too, what I want to share with you is that in this highly advanced technological world, things are constantly evolving. And in addition to you turning your resume into somebody, it's actually going to be assessed by some type of applicant tracking system, right? Your resume is going to be scored up against the job description. And when it matches it up, it'll do some analysis and it'll give a score, and you will start to be ranked, right? So before you even meet a person, before you're able to get in and charm somebody, right, with your personality and tell the story of your work history. You might be a great storyteller. If you're not telling it well enough to beat the algorithm, then your resume will not even make it to an actual person, right? And so we have to understand the process, right? And then we can understand how we can tell that story to beat the algorithm and and to project something that makes people curious about learning more about who you are, right? So again, you complete an application online, you go to the company system, it goes to the ATS, the applicant tracking system, and you guys know this very, very well. You're either going to get a notice of saying, hey, it didn't meet our criteria, or it'll actually make it pass to a real person, and that person will really start to look at your resume, and if they like what they see, then they actually schedule the resume. This is a visual representation of it, and this is very, very crude, but it is real, and I need to really stress the reality of things. People are literally thousands of people are going into these online sites, and it is being assessed, ATS system, and then if it all goes well, you have some people that are going to be laid out, right? But it goes through an analysis, right? So really try to understand and grasp that, and figure out how do I score well on that applicant tracking system. So in addition to that, let's understand what a successful candidate looks like, right? The mindset that you as a job seeker need to be in order to start to make connections in meaningful ways. The first thing, and I run into this constantly, is you need to be company centric. It's not about you, right? It's about how do you provide value to the company by knowing the company, where they are going, where they have been, what is the job description, what are they really asking for, right? Some of these things will be found on the website. Some of them will be found when you talk to people. But more importantly, when you start talking to people, and I do think networking is a very important piece of this, you might discover new initiatives that are taking place, or that are in the backbone that are about to take place, right? And if you can find that information out, that's going to be key, because now you're positioning yourself to fill the current need, and also to be a resource for a current project that's coming on. That by itself is amazing if you can get ahead of where they are. But you have to think, what do I do? How do I provide value to the company first? So as a recruiter, I've noticed that there's usually on an entry level basis, you may not have experience, and we understand that. You know, you're starting off with education, you have some background, you may have done an internship, you may not have, you have done some volunteer work, so on and so forth. But the stories that we're looking for to help us demonstrate the skills that we're looking for, which is on a basic level: communication, critical thinking, knowing how to make good decisions, leadership, knowing how to bring people together and follow a path, teamwork, if you're part of a team, knowing how to follow, which is very important, and knowing how to assist, taking initiative, and then also the interpersonal skills. There is conflict at work, right? And it's only those that are able to know how to manage that conflict effectively, know how to look out for things that could be that could put your reputation in jeopardy, or the reputation of your supervisor, boss, executive, or the organization, right? Knowing how to avoid that and to be a positive and productive worker is going to be very important. That's that interpersonal skill. Sometimes people call it EQ, or certain things like that. But the stories that allow you to demonstrate that you have these skills to whatever level, right, comes from the activities, right? Your work experience, stories from work experience, stories from volunteering. Maybe you're part of a student organization, and I highly recommend, if you can get a part of a student organization that's related to your field, definitely do so. You're starting to build a network there. And also there's some leadership opportunities as well. Sports, you're talking about a team player. If you're in sports, then you definitely want to put that on your resume. People innately know that, right? There may be solitary sports, or there may be group sports. I don't think it matters as much, but that is just the context of which you're going to talk about, where you exercise all these skills. And of course, unique programs. If there's any like job programs that are related to getting into an actual facility, job location, then talk about that. If you've helped in a particular way, use that. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for skills, right? but you're demonstrating it and you're telling them through the story of these activities on your resume, right? It's very simple, very concise, and never undervalue your story, right? I've had plenty of people that say, oh, I just did this and I just did that and I didn't think anything of it. But then when you look at the results, it's a phenomenal story, right? And so that's why our advisors and our instructors and our educators are here to kind of help you know how to construct that story, that narrative that shows that you are the ideal person. So that's what brings us to today, the resume builder, taking all that into consideration, the context, and then moving that towards an actual attractive product, which is you, which is your resume. Let's get into it. So we're going to focus on a couple of things. The main thing right now we're going to focus on is formatting. One of the basic kind of tenets of a good resume. So, but you have to understand there are different types of resumes, right? And they serve different functions for different opportunities, right? So, for example, some of you are familiar with a CV or a curriculum vitae. That's more on an academic level, right? That's more for grad school, maybe for even certain fellowships or internships that are available at the post-secondary level, which works well. That can be as long as it needs to be. People that are going for their doctorals or masters or just into a basic program, and they have a large history. If they're in transition, and I'm pretty sure some of you might be in transition, you have 10 years worth, 5 years, 10 years worth of something in the past. Don't hide that. You don't have to shape it, lay it all out for the CV. But for the traditional resume, for the business world, it's more succinct, it's more concise, it's more efficient, right? And for that, usually one page is standard for entry levels. You can go out into 2 pages. It's not necessarily recommended as much because hiring managers, they're taking literally less than a minute to look at your resume, right? So you need to be able to make it concise, structured in a way that things pop out and they see who you are quickly, right?
Hey, Damien, there's a question in the chat room.
Yeah.
The question is, what would you recommend for us to put in our resume if we have no experience in this new field? For example, I made a career change. What would I want to include?
So that's where I think you would come up with a functional resume, because what you're going to look at, and we'll dive into this, what we're going to look at is looking at some of the attributes, right, that the job description is asking for. Maybe a certain type of skill set, maybe even familiarity with a certain type of software. You may have used a software in a particular area, in a particular field, right? But now you're going into a different field, right? But you know what? The process is the same. The result is slightly different, but you understand the process, you understand the software, you can produce that stuff. So I would definitely look at your history and try to create a functional resume where you're showcasing transferable skills, right? Skills that can be applied from one place also to another place. And I'm going to give very specific examples of what that looks like as we go through, okay? So hopefully that'll address it, but definitely feel free to ask questions. Anthony, stop me when I need to, and I'll address some questions. We've got a lot of content to cover, and hopefully that'll get you ready for the upcoming content. So resumes. This is a study that came up, and I thought it was fascinating. It shows there are these eye tracking studies where employers that were looking at resumes, what areas of the resume are most important. And what they came out with that study, what they concluded was it's this F pattern, right? Looking at the top, right? They're looking at the side, and they're looking at the top end of it, right? Everything else doesn't have the same amount of priority, right? Still may be looked at, but not as much. But this area is the area of the resume that can be most important. And that's what we're going to target today, right? Making sure that you're coming strong with those action verb words. You may be familiar with those action verb words. They're the words that are going to indicate some type of skill, right? And so if they're looking for skills, you need to hit them with words immediately that show skill, right? And it follows this pattern. So customize your resume. Again, you want to do one or two pages. Make sure you do spell check as possible. There are plenty of online free apps that you can use to scan your resume for spelling errors and whatnot. So this is very important. So use those tools. I think Grammarly is one that I use quite often. The words that I struggle with are French words, right? I realize this. These words that have these very intricate spellings and things that make no sense to the common language, but has evolved into the English language for whatever reason. I'm not going to go there, but if you are somebody that has trouble with certain words, like there, where, where, were, was, then use those types of applications to help you out. And as a student, you actually might have services that help you. Actually, as a student, you might have access to these services for free that you can use. So let's see here. Make it visually appealing. Again, we talked about this one page. Font size, 10 to 12 is usually best. Again, at this point, we're talking about when it's presented in front of a person. Now, for an applicant tracking system, it doesn't take into consideration too much how big the font size is. You can probably have like five font and it would still probably pick it up. But at that point, you may be going strong, to put in content based on the algorithm, but when it is addressed to an actual person, it's not going to be attractive. So we need to take that into consideration. Content, algorithm, formatting, visually appealing is for the actual person. So now we're making a conscious decision to take both those into consideration and in these particular areas. Okay. So let's see here. Do that. Oh. Resume components. So here are some basic areas of the resume that are very crucial to let the recruiter and or hiring manager understand, your story. You don't have to use all of these, but these are definitely things that are very familiar to most people. The heading, the contact information, summary of qualifications, education, relevant coursework, related projects, employment history, additional skills you can mention. But there's a certain trick that we need to be able to address with that. Now I'll bring that up. And of course, activities and affiliations. Again, this is where those student organizations come. This is where those volunteer experience comes in too. And it could be even, things that you might not think are as important, but in some form or fashion, it shows that you're working in an organized fashion, probably under an organization, official or unofficial, to achieve a particular objective and goals, using resources, using the skills that you've acquired, management skills or organization skills. So again, just keep these into consideration. Now, heading. What I'm going to go through right now in a very specific fashion is how do you frame the information in an effective and efficient way, right? Because I've seen resumes where it's too much space, too much real estate is not being used or it's not being used effectively, and it will diminish your ability to tell your story. Okay, so starting from the top, heading, information. Here's something that I've seen quite common. People just list the name, they list the address and the email and the cell phone contact information. No, when it deals with the email, make sure it's a simple, professional email, something that's not too, I guess, I don't want to say youthful or immature, but things that just aren't appropriate. I've seen like, big man 459. You don't want to do that. You don't want to say sexy and sassy 7812. We don't want that. Right? What we want is hopefully your name or maybe your last name and a couple of numbers after it, because of course you're not the only one name that, and that's it. It's directly to you, right? But one thing I want to point out is this bit of information, this section took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, right? That's probably 4 additional lines or 3 additional lines that you can't use now towards the end. So instead, recommend making it more efficient, okay? Name up on top, bold, and then put maybe the city, there you are, and maybe the phone number. Now, there has been some speculation to say that the city may not be something you want to put either, because there's some type of discrimination called location discrimination, where if you're trying to apply for something that's too far and the employer knows that, they may say, oh, well, this could be a liability because from here to there, anything could happen, or it may be difficult for them to get home, or depending on their transportation, it might not work out as well, them being a consistent contributor, especially if we need them on a turn of a dime. Okay, so but just letting you know, this is how it has shown, but question mark over the actual city. Okay. Summary is very nice, pointed, high level overview of who you are. I would call it a mini bio, right? And I think there's different aspects of producing a very effective summary. Okay. Talk about professional characteristics, the industry that you're interested in or that you are in, years of experience if possible, expertise, or if you have any specialization skills, or if you specialize in something, that would be ideal. Education, put that in there, technical computer skills, and management style if possible. Slightly narrative, but it doesn't have to strictly adhere to some basic grammatical tenets. So, for example, here's something that I put in a bullet form, right? You would say something like motivated, customer-oriented, entry-level professional, over 2 years of such and such experience, various retail stores, nonprofit organizations. You're a quick learner, and willing and able to assist in either customer or coworkers in a cooperative and professional manner, right? Skilled in, and I start to list a few things, right? Event planning, public speaking, also more some soft skills, and then I go right into some of the hard skills too: Microsoft Office, Excel, Google Docs, and social media. Okay, so those are some a bullet point fashion of summary of skills that you can put at the very top, right underneath your basic information. Now, education. This is interesting because there's different ways that people have constructed this, but I'm gonna give you something very, very basic. Again, this is something that I pulled when I was at Cal State San Bernardino, a career advisor over there. And so we have something basic here, but what I really want to highlight are making sure that you're spelling out the actual program that you're in, the university that you're in, the college that you're in its entirety. Okay, no acronyms, spelled out in its entirety. You have also when you expect to end your either program or graduate, and you can put expected there. It's fine. People understand what that means, and of course the actual degree that you are striving for, right, in its entirety. If there's any specific concentrations or specializations or certificates that's associated with it, then you want to put that as well. If you are doing certificates and there's a license number, or you're doing a licensing and there's a licensing number, make sure you want to put that as well. You could put your GPA if you want to. It's highly recommended to do it if you've reached above 2.0, but if actually above 3.0. But if you are below that, it's not necessarily discouraged. However, that is something that some people look at and they question. But usually the story will tell, oh, maybe this person hasn't had a 3.0 because they're juggling a lot of things and they're doing it successfully, and very effectively. And of course, they're trying their best to achieve their next level of educational attainment in the process, but be ready to tell that story, right? If you had any honors or any type of accolades of any sort, certifications, and or let's say what is it? What they call it? Certificates of attendance. You want to put that in there too, especially if it relates to the position or the industry, not just the position, but the industry that you're trying to break into. So relevant courses. So to your point, if you have no experience, you're drawing on your education, and the best way to draw on your education is through courses. So you can put relevant courses on your resume, right? You don't have to. And what I'm saying this is be very specific as to the name of the course, the overall name of the course, not just the catalog number. Catalog numbers, no one really understands, right? But if you say, you know, if you're in the healthcare field, if you're talking about, I think something is like phlebotomy, if that's even a phrase, you know, or X-ray 101 or something like that. You know, X-ray tech to this specific kind of degree. You want to list that, okay, if you're going into that field. So. Related projects. If you did a project inside of that course, right, that you think is directly related to what you're trying to get into, mention that course. Again, very high level, very simple. You don't have to put into too much detail, you know, who you worked with, but just to say, hey, this is what I was a team member for this project, and this is what we were able to use and what we came up with. That's it. Simple, very light. You could do probably up to 3 of those, especially if you don't have experience, but you do have college work that is related to the job that you're trying to get into. Now, accomplishment statements. This is the fun part. This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where we start to shape our resume for impact, right? For purpose, for value. And I'm taking a kind of like a grammatical approach, a written approach to really kind of show you how to build it, not just to tell you. I've been on plenty of workshops where they say, hey, you know, just put your accomplishment statement, make sure you have an action verb word, and create something. Right? No, we need to be very specific as to what it is we're saying. And so let's go through. I've again gone through hundreds of resumes. And I saw a pattern emerge, and you know, I kept it in my back pocket. And I kept saying it again. I kept saying who's getting hired, and kept looking at the resume, and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see something, and it emerged in this fashion. So 4 main tips to kind of show you how to do this. But what I want to do is to emphasize the value in your story and not underselling yourself. Here's a case study. Call them the Smith brothers. They were, it's really, really simple. One brother, well, let me take a step back. They come from a family of accountants, right? The grandfather's accountant, the father's an accountant, and guess what they want to be? An accountant, right? But they interpret the world and kind of share their story differently. Of course, they're individual people. And as they are going through their education, they've experienced some of the same things, but they're talking about it in a completely different fashion. So the story behind this is there's this program called VITA, which is Volunteer Income Tax Association, where county students go to kind of help low-income, either like community members, to help them with their taxes. And so, you know, they both went through this program, but how they're sharing their story on their resume are completely different. And I'm going to let you figure out which one do you think you would want to hire. Okay, if you don't hold on 1 second. So you have to excuse me. I have my children in the background. This is a COVID world. So,
Damien, there's a question as well. So.
Okay, question. What is the question?
Yeah, the question is, can you add your volunteer work under relevant courses on your resume, or would it be under a different category?
It would be under a different category. And like, for example, activities, that's where you would put that information. It's only, you know, course work and course projects are what you put in, usually either the relevant coursework or the relevant projects or related projects. Okay. Hopefully that answers the question there.
The second part of the question is it necessary to add if you do not have professional experience in the field? So if you do have some volunteer work that might be related, should you include that on your resume?
Oh, definitely. Yes, please do. There's no, it's not going to hurt anything. It's your best effort to try to articulate why you are related to it. Just understand that your goal is to try to figure out how do you construct this and write this down so that it translates. And you may look at it, you might want to question it. However, what I recommend is for you to have other people look at it too to see if it translates with them. Okay, if it does, then you're heading in the right direction. Okay, so if you can hold on 1 second here, we'll take a quick step away. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure that we're not going to have a photo bomb or a child kind of crash the situation. It's a reality. It's a reality. So back to the Smith brothers. So as they're applying for the big four firms, right? One of the brothers puts on, let's see here, on his resume, assisted residence file their taxes, right? That's exactly what he did, without a doubt, right? But the other brother who did the same thing, this is what he wrote. Advise over 20 low-income residents on how to maximize their tax refund. They did the same thing, but they told different stories. The level of professionalism were completely different. So if you were to hire somebody, and I'm just going to let this open too. If you were to hire somebody, would you hire brother A or brother B? Put it in the chat box. I'm curious to see what you guys would pick. B. Okay, I see B. It's kind of hard to reasons. Looks like blurry on mine. Oh, it's a little blurry. Okay. See if I can. Well, I'll walk through it definitely. And just to let you guys know, at the end of this will be a recording that Professor B will have at her, and I will make sure that you guys have the access of it too. And hopefully it'll become a little bit clear on that end. So I do apologize for the lack of clarity on this. But to your point, the answer is actually B. So, and it's kind of obvious as to why. So the goal for you, as you're creating your resume, your bullet point, your accomplishment statements, you want to make sure that you create something that talks about either proficiency, capacity, purpose, and or impact, right? So when we go back, we can kind of see it. We can see it. Advise over 20 low income, we know how much. Residents, okay, who, on, how to, and now we're talking about the how, right? So and advise, that's the skill. So you see all these components coming together quite nicely in that story. So again, proficiency, capacity, purpose, impact, numbers, impact, results, right? The other part is looking at trying to understand skills and activities. How do you bring those together? I recommend that we use action verb words. Okay, these are the words that are just relate to skills and make that connection. Okay, so let me see if I can hone this in to you for you. If you guys are familiar with this game called Taboo, it's one of my favorite board games or group games. What it does is that it allows a participant to try to use words that are placed on a card, right? A variety of words to try to get your teammate to say the word, but you can't say the word, and you can't use a certain amount of words, right? But you have to use all these other words, use all this other language to get the other person to think a particular word, concept, idea, right? And I think some of the same processes are involved with your resume. The words that you use makes people think about the skill that you're trying to convey, right? In a variety of different ways. So we're trying to avoid redundancy, but we're trying to be creative, right? So I'm going to go through this brief example to kind of showcase to you the impact of this, and it's every day. So we have this person over here. He uses words in his resume, action verb words in his resume, like discussed, defined, directed, motivated, and persuaded, right? What do you think his skill set is? Just type it in the chat box. What do you think he's trying to convey? What skill set he's trying to convey? Anything? Salesman, okay, right? That's a position, not necessarily a skill, but I understand where you're coming from. He is definitely exercising there. Remember the skills that we talked about earlier? They're probably there too. Okay, so for this one, it's communication skills, right? For this young lady right here, she used words like analyzed, assembled, devised, calculated, programmed. What type of skill does she have? Technical skills, right? This individual right here, she used words like designed, generated, developed, integrated, launched. That what she's trying to convey is the creative side of her. And the last one, I'm gonna let you guys figure it out. Achieved, assigned, who assigns stuff, who delegates stuff, right? Who encourages people, and who on a constant basis is evaluating the performance of people. Who do you think, what type of skill do you think that this person has? Leadership, okay, leadership, okay. That's typically what people go to, and I think it's right. Out of this kind of exercise, what I was able to kind of look at and say is definitely management skills. But leadership skills, management skills, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. We're not wrong. But you're seeing now how these words have an impact on people, right? Okay. So, but there are some words that we need to avoid, okay, very clearly, because I think that they kind of mute the story, the impact of the story. And please, if you have in your resume words like assigned, responsible for, or worked to, I would highly encourage you to revisit those words and try to really tell the story. Assisted could be anything, right? It could be you just getting a cup of coffee, right? Or assisting means that you were a part of the team drilling down on some information to make a effective and important decision, right? You were in the room, you were sharing your thoughts. That could be assisted too. Those are two different ways of looking at things, right? So don't let the word assisted hide your story, bring out your story. Responsible for is a job title, is a job description. That means like you're responsible for, yes, you did that, but what was your true value, right? Did you do anything more, impactful? Did you have results, right? Did you have better results than the previous person that worked there, right? Are you filling in for somebody and you have results that are again leaning toward being more positive, and now they're considering you for other projects, right? So don't just say responsible for. Worked to. Yes, you worked to do something, but what did you do? Like what happened at the end? So again, make sure you consider those words and come back to them if you have them there. Now, what I wanted to share with you is something that can hopefully help you use your resume and understand the value and the impact it has as it's going through the algorithm, right? There's plenty of sites out there, but I highly encourage people to use now. This is a more recent update. How do you challenge the algorithm? How do you beat the algorithm? Go to places like JobScan, right? So I'm going to show you what JobScan is briefly, so that you kind of have an idea as to how to use it. But in short, what JobScan does is that you can put in a job description, you can put in your resume, and you can press calculate, and it'll actually score it for you based on the job description, right? And if you think the number is low, then you know you need to go back and make some changes, right? So you see here, everybody's typing in JobScan. So I'm going to see if I can kind of show you this briefly, yeah, okay, there we go. So here's the here's the site. And I took the liberty to kind of walk you through how to do this, right? So you see here, you have the upload resume and you have the paste job description. So what I did, right? Let's see if I can kind of bring this up here. I have a job description as a career counselor, career advisor job description, right? Off of Google, right? So what it is, it has all this other miscellaneous information, but what I want to go to is to go to more so I can look at the actual job description, you know, essential functions, qualifications, all that stuff. Make this real simple. I'm just going to copy it, go down to the bottom. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to job and paste it inside of the job description. And I'm going to go to my resume, right? And I'm going to highlight my resume so I can get this. Hello. All this stuff down in here, all this fun stuff, right? Oh, I may have some formatting issues I may have to deal with over here. Go back to the job description, paste it in there, bingo, and now I'm gonna go to scan, right? It's gonna do some calculations, and it's gonna let me know, you know, what my findings are, you know, the score. Is this a match based on this particular thing? And unfortunately, it says I'm a 40% match. So if I'm going to go for that position, I'm going to have to go back, retool this, score it again, right? Go talk to some other people and see if I can slowly start to increase that score, right? Again, I'm not saying that this is the end all be all. What I'm saying is that this is the process that it goes through. And if you can kind of practice with this, then you know you'll get better as you get along, and you know how to score yourself. It's not like you're shooting in the dark, right? So very, very important. So I'm gonna pause real fast. We got a couple minutes here. We might be going over, but let's see if that helps out. Does that make sense to everybody? You can just write yes, no, thumbs up. Yes, yes. Okay, great, good. So go back then. And now we have our 4 ways of constructing our accomplishment statements. Right? There's the regular way, there's a serial verb way, there's a verb serial adjective way, and there's an adverb verb way. I know it's complicated, but once you see it, it'll make sense. So the first example, this person used words like, I provide excellent customer service, and I sold products, right? But after kind of going through and trying to figure out how do we retool this, right? We retool it by looking at the job description, right? We go through and we highlight some words there, and then we figure out what are the core things that they're looking for, and then we can go back and try to re-engineer the wording. So instead, we can use words like assess customer needs to, again, those words, match with, we're talking about purpose and value now, appropriate products and services, right? Or we can go service customer with recovery techniques, right? Which is basically just going in and going through the stock, you know, and but you're using a system, right? Recovery systems, right? To make sure you're satisfying the customer needs, right? So again, you're probably using some of the same words that are in the job description, but now you're repurposing them and you're adding a little bit more extra customization to your resume to start matching and scoring higher on that algorithm. So that's one example. It's the original form, right? Now let's see here. This is Daryl here. He is a student who's trying to get into HR, right? And so he's a student leader. So he had something like, you know, responsible for, that's a big no-no, scheduling company representatives to speak at regular meetings, right? Help students obtain internships. Okay, great. When we look at his job description, what he's, you know, looking at the job description, analyzing the words, he goes back and says, okay, this is what they're probably saying. This is what I want to attack first. Stuff like ability to coordinate events, right? He didn't use that language, but in the job description, it's there. But that's exactly what he did. So he's changing out scheduling to coordinating events, right? And so what he comes up with is a serial kind of adjective. It's building up as we move forward. So he scheduled, he advertised, and he hosted, right, professional development workshops, right? That's what he did for, right? That's that word now. Approximately 200 students. Now we're talking about impact using numbers. Again, using the serial verb form. Organized and coordinated. He's using the words now, right? Speaker series. That's what he did. Let's talk about value now. 2, why is he doing this? Prepare students or student members to interview for various internship opportunities, right? So saying what he did and why he did it, right? So let me go to the next one. Another student. Let's see here. What her goal? She has something in her resume like input information in the database, tracks sales of customer or customers, right? What she really wanted to be is a business analyst, right? Look at the job description, analyze the job description, highlighted a few keywords. Found out that yes, they're looking for people who has information about management systems, right? Which is a was a POS system in a sense. Sometimes they're very sophisticated, sometimes they're not. But if you can kind of bring that out and share with them that you are familiar with POS systems, then in this case it's perfect, right? And of course, they're looking for demonstrated ability working with Microsoft Office products such as Excel, and so on and so forth. So her story is that she was in retail and she did use a POS system, and the system that she had allowed her to kind of see over time what her sales were, and what she was able to do was identify, during a certain time frame there is a holiday that people didn't even pay attention to. Let's say it was like Father's Day. Joking. That was personal. What I meant to say is like Secretary's Day, or some day that people are encouraged to make some type of purchases, right? But no one paid attention to it. She went back, she found the data, it confirmed, she brought an idea, and then what happened is the business actually made some adjustments based on her recommendation. And guess what? That's an effective story she could tell in her resume. It's an effective story she can bring to the interview. It's brilliant. So let's see here. I think there's one more. There's some words to avoid. Again, I want to go back to this, but what I'm trying to say is here's an opportunity to re-engineer words like responsible for. Okay, so for example, and this is definitely crucial. Somebody wrote responsible for developing and monitoring invoices and purchase orders to ensure customer order accuracy. Okay, responsible for. That's what you did. We don't know how you did it or if you're even good at it, right? But what you want to do is try to shape something a little bit more focused on highlighting the skills, right? So developed and monitored invoices and purchase orders to ensure customer order accuracy. They had the tail end of it, but the front end of it, they need to make some changes so that they can get to the point immediately. So that's a good way to try to re-engineer some of that, some of your accomplishment statements. Last thing too, I want to focus on is job resources. If you're struggling with understanding the vocabulary of your industry or something like that, you could go to different resources like ONET, right, which is a very powerful tool that allows you to kind of look at an actual description of a job from like a very high level, and to try to understand, what is it that they do, what tools that they possibly use, softwares, where are some trainings that you can attach yourself to or engage with, so you can so you can kind of prepare yourself to transition there. I think there's a question. Clarify. Can you clarify a question? Do you know what that question is about, Anthony?
No, the question was, can you use aided? So I don't know if that's related to what you were discussing. So I was just getting clarification.
So aided in, I think it depends on the story. But when you say aided, you can probably take it to a more operational level, right? Aided seems very abstract, Like, yes, you aided somebody, but what did you really do, right? Did you, did you create something? Did you format something? Did you give a report on something? Did you engage with somebody for a particular outcome? I would probably take the word aided out and use words like things that are more operational in nature, right? So let me take a step back and go to ONET. Okay, I have an example here. I'm gonna try to take you to ONET real fast, so you can kind of see what it looks like. So this is ONET. It's very basic. It's not too exciting. It's a powerful tool, right? When you go to the upper corner here, you can kind of type in a job or an occupation that you're interested in. Let's just say X-ray tech. Technician or something like that. And what'll happen is it'll list several, and this is kind of hard for you to see, so I can kind of zoom in on this. They give you a variety of different kind of titles of what that might be, right? And if you find something that you're really interested in, right, then why don't you tap into it? Let's just say radiological technologist. Now, you have summary, details, custom. You have the skills, tools, knowledge, abilities, everything about that particular profession is in the grasp of your hand. And this is your vocabulary that you can use now, that you can source, right, to start to bake into your resume. So again, I highly would look into this. And it says some amazing things about that particular position. And also if it's like, if it's a hot a position that has a future, or if it's dwindling down and it may not be important, it's also keeping track of that too. So it's something that I would definitely look into. Back to the presentation. We're a little over. How's everybody doing? Can we maybe put in another 10 more minutes to finish this off strong? Are we good with that, or not?
Question in the chat about can you use the 1T program for, or the OneNet program for master program? So is the OneNet good for master program plans?
I think at a very basic level. So what I've seen with ONET is they'll say, if you're trying to look for a certification or something like that, then yes, they say for this job, typically you might have to have a master's degree, or you might have a doctoral degree, right? There are several different programs that are out there, and you might be able to click on one, and it'll take you to a site where we'll have like a huge archive of different programs that are out there, right? That might be one thing. So it can help, but I don't think it's the silver bullet, right? But it does give some context. What I love is that it allows you to start connect with professional organizations, right? Because believe it or not, you may have to get a degree, but then later on you'll have to get a certification, and those certifications are usually by the professional organizations, right? So at least it'll give you that information ahead of time. Some universities and colleges will actually have it to where, and they're starting to get hip to this, they'll have it to where you graduate with your degree and that certification, which is a great combination, but sometimes they just have you with the degree and only the degree. And so having that professional network and the ability to get a certification is great. The question is, where do you find that out, right? ONET is one of the places. And believe it or not, I don't care what you do, there's an association out there. I just found out that there's a sugarcane association. There's a cornbread coalition somewhere happening. There's everything has an association or society that's attached to it. So coalition. So find out what it is, get engaged, get involved, and find out how you can step your game up and find out where the opportunities are before they even get out. The other thing is organizations, professional organizations usually know about initiatives that are taking place and opportunities are taking place too. So you want to look into that. Okay, and go back to the presentation here, a little over. a little over, but I think we're having a good time, right? Everybody's having a good time. This is useful information. You can respond in the chat room if it's a thumbs up, yes, no. So yes, all right, great. And the last thing I want to do is introduce you to organization, right? I think that we're in this world where we can use Google Docs to help us keep organized. And so what I recommend is setting up like your own tracking system, right? Let me see if I can find it. That'll bring up my my little example here. One second. Yeah. So copy. What I'll do is showcase to you what I mean by that. Again. So what I do is use Google Drive spreadsheets to really figure out like when did I apply for stuff. I track it myself. When did I apply? What was the source? Who is there? What's the company website? Because at the end of the day, if they call you back, they're gonna be like, remember that thing you applied for 6 months ago? And you're like, yes, that was definitely on my target list. You have to go back and find that information, or if you already have it stored here, then it's a simple reference, and then you can prepare yourself to engage more effectively and efficiently, right? So, so again, prepare yourself the best possible way, and you know, I'll just share that with you. Drop the mic and
Looks like we,
and walk away. Right?
looks like we have one other question in the Q&A section, actually.
Okay.
The question, it says, I had several years of working experience in my country before moving to live here. Is it possible to apply for entry level and mention that I need to start working and learning from the basic?
Learning from the basics. So basically, can you read the question again? I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything.
So it looks like the person has lots of working experience from their country before moving here.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is about applying for an entry level position.
Mm-hmm.
And should she mention the need to start working at kind of a basic level? So when you're applying for entry level, do you need to mention that you would need some training, I guess, at the basic level? I think that's the question.
No, I think that is they would probably know that already by looking at your resume and having that conversation. I think there may be another way to try to engage with them to see, their interest level in you. That's the main thing, right? You can come in and say, hey, I want to try this, but I'm going to need training, right? They're going to know that, right? Any entry level thing is an introduction. They have a training program ready for you, right? Usually it's part of the orientation. They have you sit down and talk to some people, and then, or they have, they may fly you out somewhere, right? They may take you away and say, hey, we're going to give you 2 weeks worth of training first before, and then if you have questions, then you can kind of go there. What they're looking for is fit, right? They're looking for, are you the right personality type? Do you have the basic, like constructs to really do well and thrive in this position in a way that's productive, and it's not going to be, conflicting in some sort? Are you a person that they can train, right? And that you can, grasp it and be able to have an impact sooner rather than later. So basically, they will know that. What you could ask is, what type of training do you provide, right? That could be a question you could ask. You could possibly say, hey, I value some of your core competencies, and I see that you have training already established, but I'm the type of person that likes to continue to develop and grow, right? Is there any recommendations that you've seen other people do on the side that has helped them progress in their development in their position or not, right? So you could ask questions like that, right? Um, because you're not disrespecting the fact that they have something and you're just saying I don't want to do it. You're saying, yes, I am so excited about the training that you have, I can't wait, but I know after this is done I'm going to continue to try to get better, and I want to know what people have done to make themselves better, right? So you kind of take that approach too. And speaking of that, um, if you are in the process of trying to continue to develop your skill set, I want to make sure that I have an opportunity to share with you that myself and Anthony Hill, my counterpart here, um, uh, we are putting together a virtual career development event sponsored by a small grassroots organization called We Will Rise, and we're putting together other um, talks, have resume development, preparing for interview skills, right? Preparing to showcase your interview skills in a positive, polished, and professional way. And once you get on, right, if you are hired on, how do you survive the first 90 days, right? That's going to be very critical, right? We're going to have employer panels, from seasoned professionals coming in and sharing and showcasing what they've learned over their tenure at their company and throughout their career, to try to share with people and give them some insight, because there are plenty of things come to find out that we may not be privy to, or we may not have thought about in a very particular business kind of way, right? That affects us in the most subtle ways, and in some cases is the reason why we may not be getting as much response from our employers than we would like, right? But when you hear what's going on from the employer side, then you start to understand, oh, okay, next time I should say this, or next time this is how I should phrase the question, right? Maybe this is how I engage people, right? So again, we have two events that are coming up August 15th from 12 to 2, and also it says June 22nd. My apologies. It's supposed to be August 22nd. Again, the same time, 12 to 2. Online, myself, Anthony Hale, and a few other people, and employer panels. We have people from tech world, business and finance. We're definitely going to be pulling in people from hopefully Kaiser, cross my fingers, the medical community, to really kind of give you some extra insight as to what it takes to compete well in those industries, in retail, of course, as well. So I'm going to stop there. And this is pretty much as far as I go. We've gone a little bit over. I'm glad that we all had a chance to listen in on this, and hopefully this was informative. And again, Anthony posted the links there, which is great. Before we leave, I want to make sure that checking in with anybody, if you would like to leave any comments. Did you like it? Was this insightful? Was there anything in particular? If I could say one thing, if you can type in one thing that you're leaving with today that maybe you didn't know, or maybe it was a different perspective, right? Something of value. Can you type that into your chat box right now? Thank you. Very informative. Thank you. Very informative. Okay. Works out. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Then it looks like, again, I want to thank you for joining into this call. Hopefully it was informative. And if, time permits, I may be able to come on again at a later time. More knowledge, right? Job scan, using words like assisted, trying to steer away from that. Exactly. Okay. Well, with that, thank you again. Look forward to connecting with you guys in the future. And if you want to reach out to me, please feel free. 619-884-3350. That's my cell. Just text, or even better, I put in my email. And definitely, if there is time, I will definitely try to reach out and see what I can do to help you customize your resume so you can have an efficient and impactful resume to get you where you need to go as soon as possible. All right, so we're going to end right now, and you may be getting a survey in the future just to probably by myself to make sure you can capture some basic information to make sure I can improve this workshop and also help other people in the future. All right. So with that in mind, thank you again, and we're going to send off another 5 more minutes, and then